Hello, everyone. It's great to be here with you all today. Welcome to the kickoff of our 4-day, 1-hour series, Meet Phase 2 Democracy Machine Fellows. Today's conversation titled Storytelling, Language, Decolonization, Rethinking History, and Care will be moderated by our dear guest, Adela Licona, joined by a part of the current cohort of the Democracy Machine, Shawn Reilly, Yogesh Maitreya, and Astrid González. I am Kemi Ukadike, Head of Artist Initiatives and Inclusion at Eyebeam. Before we dive into today's event, I'd like us all to acknowledge this space and take a collective breath and moment of silence. Thank you. I would also like to kick off this event with a land acknowledgement and describe myself to any guests who are blind or low vision. Please drop a greeting line in the chat with your name, your pronouns, where you're meeting us from, as well as your land acknowledgements. I am a dark-skinned African woman with shoulder-length blonde curly hair. I am wearing round, dark blue rimmed glasses and a black sweatshirt. My background is blurred. I am seated in the land of the Munsee Lenape people of Fort Greene, Brooklyn, New York. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. And now for an access check and to orient you with our virtual room. Several Eyebeam team members are here supporting today's event. Please feel free to reach out in the chat should you need anything or have any technical difficulties. From our team, Nat and Sherston are in the Open Eyebeam space to assist with our access needs or questions. Please feel free to reach out in the chat box should you need anything or have any technical difficulties getting connected. This is our first pilot of live streaming in Open Eyebeam. We're really excited about that. Because this is the first time we're using Open Eyebeam to host an event, we welcome suggestions for a smoother experience in the feedback room on the platform. Today's gathering is being captioned by Jamie, who will provide remote real-time captioning. We also have ASL provided by Vern and Elise. They are all from SciNexus. Open Eyebeam is still in development, so if you run into any accessibility issues, please reach out to tech@eyebeam.org. Lastly, Arturo Ahumada will provide Spanish to English audio translation. While this is Eyebeam's first time conducting a multi-language public event with real-time language interpretation, we are still piloting new ways to engage in multilingual real-time communication. We will also provide a Spanish transcript after the events. Organizationally, we have committed to providing multimodal access to events, which includes services such as captioning and language interpretation. This initiative is a part of Eyebeam's ongoing effort to support, elevate, and amplify the voices of artists who are creating space for imagination, an activity that is necessary now more than ever in these challenging times. Additionally, our artist fellows have requested that Eyebeam decenter English in public events as a visible act of resistance against colonial practices. We are proud to do so. On that note, I want to remind everyone speaking today, please do not rush and remember to take a breath. This greatly helps our captioners and interpreters. We are also recording this event for archival purposes. To commence the event, I would like to provide some context for the Democracy Machine and Open Eyebeam. Launched in 2021, Democracy Machine is a multi-year experiment that hands over the reins of Eyebeam's residency program to artist cohorts. We gratefully acknowledge the support of the Andrew Mellon Foundation, Ford Foundation, Henry Luce Foundation, Jerome Foundation, Craig Newmark Philanthropic Fund, Atlantic Foundation, and New York City Department of Cultural Affairs to support our radical redesign of Eyebeam's flagship residency program. Currently, Democracy Machine welcomes Phase 2 fellows, and these 12 artists continue to critically examine and interrogate the role of historically dominant power structures, yielding in a remixing and reframing of the creation of technology made with new social values. In tandem with the growth of Democracy Machine is the development of the interactive open source space and online platform that is Open Eyebeam. Populated with virtual studios, Open Eyebeam presents the work of the collective cohort and is an experimental space for building creative ambition, diversification, and interconnection across communities. The platform is an ongoing project built and stewarded by Eyebeam's technology fellow, Brent Bailey. Taking place this week is a 4-part series of 1-hour live streams broadcast on Open Eyebeam. Each stream will feature several artists discussing their socially engaged art practices within the context of fellowship and how they set the terms for a fellowship built on trust and support. These presentations will explore how they confront various issues from the movement to decolonize technology, to privacy and surveillance, to the challenging of dominant narratives. Today, Adela will lead us in a dynamic conversation with 3 engaging perspectives from Shawn, Yogesh, and Astrid. The moderator and artist will delve into storytelling, language, decolonization, rethinking history and care, and discuss their vision of storytelling activism, how language operates as a tool of identity, and how care can act as a decolonial practice, and examine how history has been used as a tool of domination, which all have been impacted by colonial systems. Without further ado, we open the floor to our moderator, Adela, who will introduce herself and will hand over the mic to the artists for their respective introductions. Please look for written bios of each participant, which will be copied and pasted into the chat room on Open Eyebeam and Discord. So Adela, over to you.
Beautiful. Thank you, Kemi. Buenos días. Good morning. My name is Adela Licona, she, ella, and I greet you from the traditional homelands of the Tanahatam and the Pascuayaqui in Tucson, Arizona. I'm a light-skinned Latina elder woman with unruly gray hair wearing a black top. I'm thrilled to be here today to moderate today's discussion around storytelling, mutual care, and decoloniality, and to witness how these come together in the visions, the soundings, the tellings and retellings, the poetry, the wild imaginings, the activism and abolitionist dreamings of the 3 artists today in particular. Astrid González, buenos días. Shawn Reilly, good morning. And Yogesh Maitreya, so happy to be here with you. Before I introduce these awe-inspiring artists, thinkers, doers, dreamers from the current cohort of Eyebeam's Democracy Machine, I want to thank you all for being here and to welcome you. I'm so glad for the welcoming breath that Kemi gave us the opportunity to breathe together, to acknowledge all the places we've been and to be here together now. Bienvenidos, welcome. I want to thank everyone at Eyebeam, including the inaugural fellows whose labor has gone into making today possible. those present and those not visible to us today. I'm so grateful. And I want to thank Astrid, Shawn, and Yogesh for their art. What an awesome power to come together in radical dreaming to imagine a world we want to live in. A quick word about what to expect in today's presentation. I will introduce today's artists, and each will offer a 5 to 7 minute overview of gifts they have created for our shared consideration. We will hold questions till each and all have presented. And following Eyebeam's commitment to decenter English, Astrid, who is fluent in her understanding of English, will offer her presentation in Spanish. Gracias, Arturo, for being here to interpret and translate as needed. And to our ASL interpreters, Vern and Elise, thank you. I will speak in English, or mostly so. As each artist presents, I will take strands from their presentations and attempt to weave them into a set of quilted prompts for a guided interactive dialogue following their presentations. My goal is to offer prompts informed by what we experience here today that relate to decolonizing power, the decolonizing power and promise of both care and storytelling, and then to facilitate a dialogue of as many voices as want to participate. With that goal in mind, please be prepared to listen with your heart, take turns allowing one another to speak, and please to offer your own voice and vision as you may be moved to do so based on today's presentation. Now to our theme, Storytelling offers context and relational rootings, details, connections, living knowledges and abuelita wisdoms, non-dominant and non-dominating histories, intergenerational insights. It can introduce new and historic actors, human and non-human. It's a witnessing, a bearing witness that scholar archivist Jamie Lee discusses as a withness in the moment and as a new way to be within new histories, the making of histories. The opportunity to be with one another, brought together by the storyteller and their stories, held together in care, so that we can imagine together a decolonized future of radical, rooted, collective belonging. The decolonial element today is an act of undoing, and in a futurist kind of way, an act of preceding domination, together with a politics of refusal, a refusal of failed languages and their myths and enduring misperceptions, and of the ongoing extractions of colonialism. To decolonize our dreams, their tellings, and their doings mean to wildly together imagine and co-create a language and a world free of domination, free of violent extraction and dispossession, rather one of abundance, of radical witness, together with the human and non-human, and as Gloria Anzaldúa beseeched us to create new guiding myths. So may today's storytellers be blessed. May the ones who receive their stories be blessed, and may blessings travel to the antepasados, or those before us and those yet to come. I'm so pleased now to ask Astrid González to introduce herself, and I await her presentation. Thank you.
Hola a todos. Yo soy Astrid González, soy de la ciudad de Medellín, Colombia. Mi familia es del Pacífico colombiano, que es el territorio con mayor población afrodescendiente en Colombia. Así que crecí y nací en una ciudad con imaginarios coloniales y un imaginario del narco y en donde la presencia de personas afrodescendientes en la construcción de región y de historia ha sido anulada o ha habitado los espacios de la estereotipación.
Hello, my name is Astrid. I grew up my family's from the Pacific, Colombia, where there is mostly a Black population. I grew up in Medellin, the city of Medellin, where there is mostly a narco imaginary or colonized imaginary, where Black population has been erased from the imaginary and is full of stereotypes.
Y a partir de nacer y crecer en esta realidad dual, he empezado a hacerme preguntas sobre por qué tenía experiencias de racialización cuando salía a la calle y tenía otras experiencias cuando estaba dentro de mi casa que eran diferentes a las de mis amigas y amigos que son blanco mestizos. Entonces encuentro en la historia y en la antropología la posibilidad de argumentar esas preguntas y finalmente me acerco a espacios de jóvenes afrodescendientes en la ciudad que están buscando a través de el pensamiento social, diferentes formas de arte, darle una respuesta y visibilizar el racismo.
So I grew up in this dual reality where I was racialized being on the street, but at home I felt different. I felt different from my mixed race friends or white friends. So I started looking for answers in anthropology, and I started hanging out with young people who were also looking for answers. And I found we started looking for answers in art as a way to show racism.
Luego viajo a Chile por 5 años y allí tuve la oportunidad de encontrarme con la realidad de la diáspora, del concepto de diáspora, ya no solamente entendiendo la existencia o las realidades de las poblaciones afrodescendientes dentro de Colombia, sino que también entendiendo la realidad de los afrodescendientes peruanos, argentinos, bolivianos, chilenos, haitianos, dominicanos, y cómo todos nos unen unos puentes simbólicos, discursivos, de realidades migratorias y de luchas. Estoy en Chile durante 5 años, que es un país que solo en el 2019 reconoció legalmente a la población afrochilena. Fue la primera vez que en este territorio, en este país, se reconoció que existe una población afrodescendiente en Chile y ya no solamente se miraba a lo afrodescendiente como un extranjero. Entonces hubo un proceso de visibilización a través de colectivos de mujeres afrodescendientes en el norte de Chile, desde lo constitucional, para que se diera este reconocimiento legal en el 2019, versus Colombia, que fue en 1991.
Later on, I went to live in Chile, where I found a Black diaspora. I found out that there were people from the Black diaspora coming from Peru, Argentina, Haiti, Dominican Republic. I found out that we could build symbolic and artistic bridges between these different Black diasporas. It was only in 2019 that the Chilean government recognized the existence of Black Chileans. They were made visible mainly by the struggle of women collectives in the north of Chile. This is very different from Colombia, where Black population was officially recognized in 1991.
Finalmente regreso a Colombia y empiezo a trabajar buscando en la oralidad, en la tradición oral, las mismas respuestas que estaba buscando en la bibliografía, en los textos de historia y antropología, y también con una intención de pensar la información de manera decolonial, cómo los saberes que están dentro de mi casa o en el territorio donde son mis abuelas y mis abuelos y mis papás, pues allí está la información viva en el cotidiano. Y, y no son, ya no buscarlo en documentos escritos por hombres blancos académicos, sino que la información ya está dentro de, siempre ha estado dentro de la casa y pensar la posibilidad de la oralidad o del testimonio y la experiencia como un ejercicio para teorizar.
Then I went back to Colombia, where I started working with orality, or the oral tradition. And I started looking for the same answers I was looking for in books and in anthropology. But this time in my at home with my grandmothers, with my grandfathers, my grandparents, my mother, my father. It was a live information that was found in everyday life, not in documents anymore, written by white scholarly men. It was always present at home. It was I started working with testimonies and experiences as a way to theorize reality and art.
Y eso es todo. Gracias.
That's it. Thank you.
So beautiful, Astrid. Muchas gracias. Thank you. I'd like next to ask Shawn Reilly to introduce themselves. Shawn, there you are.
Hello, good morning, everyone. In order for, if you are on Open Eyebeam, if you want to head to my space or studio, you can check out as I'm speaking kind of about different pieces. But my name is Shawn Reilly. I recently graduated with a Master's of Education, and I actually will graduate with a Master's in Divinity after next week. I defend my thesis, and I've been working with the program for LGBT health at Vanderbilt, the first transgender patient navigation service in the country, and the only transgender health clinic in the US Southeast. And I primarily work outside of that with LGBT youth and those that are incarcerated. I'm a map maker, a print maker, a zinester, and a writer. And I really love to bring art and activism together in engaging ways. So if you were to look in my studio, you can see just a few pieces that I pulled out from my practice. So if I just wanted to talk about these 3 pieces shortly as a way to point towards a project that I will be working on with Eyebeam. So to the left, you can see this performance piece that I recently did called Gays Need Not Apply. And my great-grandfather founded a chapter of an organization called AOH, Ancient Order of the Hibernians, on Staten Island. And they run a St. Patrick's Day parade. I had grown up Irish step dancing and marching in this parade. It's the main cultural event on the island. It's a big day to celebrate Irish heritage. But as I grew older, this event became very frustrating, as it is the main event to celebrate Irish heritage, and it's so tied to Catholic identity in so many ways. But St. Patrick isn't Irish by birth. He was actually a British missionary that now Irish people lift up as an example of their heritage. And And now the main day to celebrate Irishness around the world is centered on this missionary. And what's worse is the AOH continues to ban LGBT people from the parade based on this Catholic exclusion, even though every other New York City parade allows LGBT people to walk, even though there's gay marriage in Ireland, even though our last prime minister in Ireland was gay himself, LGBT people have been banned from walking. And so in order to challenge this, I took part in an action that both marched the parade route prior to the parade with LGBT folks and blocked the parade from starting for a bit. I myself dressed in St. Patrick's drag, complete with a rainbow beard and rainbow cross and rainbow staff. So that was kind of a performance piece. In the center, you can see 2 images of block lino cuts that I created in collaboration with 2 insiders whose initials are DT and DM. They helped to choose the subjects, the portrait style, the words of multiple prints. And these are from a series called Sinners and Saints. They were unable to participate in the specific carving of the blocks because of material bans within the prison, but this is an example of insider-outsider collaboration that I really tried to build into my practice. To the right, you can see 2 snapshots from a digital zine I recently created called Jesus's Death Continues Today, a Catholic-ish Stations of the Cross reflection journal. And this zine offers a scaffolded approach to interrogating readers' belief in relation to the death penalty. This can be used as a reflective tool, but it is designed to hopefully inspire action. Catholicism, in which I was raised, has a really strong tradition of anti-death penalty work. So I decided to work from that space and leverage that asset within this digital zine. I hope that these 3 projects illuminate how my organizing and art have overlapped. I share these artifacts as a way to point towards the overall endeavor that I hope to take on with Eyebeam this summer. I am in the midst of developing what I call the Shakers and Makers Lab, which will be a series of workshops between activists and artists that aim to cross-pollinate best practices and wisdom across these 2 camps. Here, we'll be able to share how to make things like buttons and zines and screen prints and block prints, wheat pasting, drag art, photography, and more. But we also learn about escalation campaigns and bail funds and de-escalation with the police, negotiation, power mapping, restorative and transformative justice, and so much more. The project is in the hope to address an issue that I've found within Nashville organizing circles and beyond, in which artists and activists often will collaborate, but often in a superficial way or a way that stops short from all the beautiful potential I think there really is in this really generative space. And so I'm hoping that we can just go so much further, and the studio and lab space will allow for serious cross-pollination that can both elevate the work of both artists and activists in our city. So thank you all, and I will pass it back to Adela.
Shawn, thank you so much. In your presentation, I hear the power of storytelling to refuse harmful heritages and remix them. And now I'd like to ask Yogesh Maitreya to introduce himself.
Hello, everyone. It is such a pleasure to be speaking in front of all of you. And thank you, Astrid and Shawn, for sharing the art they practice and the experiences they had. My name is Yogesh Maitreya, and I am from India. I belong to one of the untouchable communities from India. Untouchability as a crime has been abolished by Indian Constitution in 1949, and the Constitution which was executed from 1951. So untouchability has been made into a crime, a punishable crime. Untouchability in India has been practiced every day. Untouchability has been a essential part of the caste system, which is the social fabric of India. And the fight against the caste has also been being fought recently in US, especially in the wake of Seattle anti-caste discrimination law. So the caste as a discriminatory system has marked its presence also across the world. I belong to one of the untouchable communities in India, and my art involves with stories of my people and how I can produce them for the larger audience. As many of you have idea that India has many languages, uh, and almost all Indians at least know 2 languages. Indians, those who go to school or colleges, they know at least 3 languages. India is a country where one linguistic state hardly communicates with the another linguistic states, because because of the nature of the caste system, which prohibits people from communicating with the larger audience. So everybody lives for their caste and thinks for their caste. I, as a publisher, a writer, and a translator, my purpose is to make the stories of the oppressed people from the untouchable communities available for the larger audience. So if a story of my community is not written in my mother tongue, which is Marathi, but which is written in something like another language called Malayalam or Tamil. So I work with the translation, and it is very much necessary for in country like India that translation from one language to another and another language to the another language, so that these stories won't die. Much of the history of my community is not verifiable. Like we in the third world countries know much about a race as a discourse and what is racism, and we know more about the Black writers, but much of my history is not verifiable to the larger world, because because of the languages we have, the languages which are made to sink into the darkness where there is no translations or there are no literary exchanges. So I, as a member from this community, when I started growing up, when I started also reading the language of English, which is my third language, I found that my history, my existence, or the stories of my communities have rarely been available in this language. And that is how I started also learning the language called English. And when we know that, like, what colonizers did to the world in terms of invading geographies and distorting much of the local knowledge of those nations, the geographies, and also the languages. In India, with my community, things happen differently. Because under the caste system, we were prohibited as an untouchable community. We were prohibited from writing, from reading, and if some among us would attempt to read or write, basically pursue the life of intellectual life, then there were punishments codified in the caste systems. For an example, if some among us hear the sacred mantra in Sanskrit, so there was a punishment of pouring molten like lead into the ears, or if we happen to chant sacred mantra as an untouchable community, so there was a punishment called cutting the chopping of the tongue. So my community was basically prohibited from pursuing the life of mind. So it becomes very much obvious as a fact that the thing from which you are the thing you are prohibited from doing, practicing, once you start asserting yourself, once you start your journey on the path of your liberation, you aggressively, you persistently do that thing. So our emancipator, Dr. Ambedkar, when he led the movement for social justice, and he had drafted the Constitution for India, Dr. Ambedkar, who is also a father of modern India, aspired us to lead the intellectual life, basically invest our life into education. And this has inspired me a lot. I myself, I grew up in a Dalit Basti. I don't want to create binaries, but just to give you a slight understanding that Dalit Bastis are like Harlems, places which are pushed into the corners, places which are neglected, places where all kinds of things happen. And I grew up in that kind of atmosphere, but it was because Dr. Ambedkar was an inspiration. A lot among us started investing into education. And because the Britishers came, it is a very interesting thing in the point of history to be noted that we in the caste system before British, we were prohibited from reading and writing, and also doing a dignified job. So we
Yogesh,
were, yeah.
it's time.
Sorry. So I'll cut down, and I'm going to basically I'm going to show you something, the thing I basically worked on and the things I produced. So these are some of the books I published. This is the book, a poetry book. This is the essays, critical essays. This is again the poetry. This is again the prose poetry. These are short stories. This is again the book. This book is the history of my community. This book is short story. This book is poetry. And this book is again poetry. Now you can say like you can see there are so much of poetry. So basically this is me, I practice my art by producing stories.
Thank you, Yogesh.
Thank
Thank you
you.
all. And now we will move towards our conversation with the goal of keeping the themes of today's presentations in mind. I'd like to generate conversation among the artists and anyone else who would like to participate. And I just want to, I want to express my gratitude for being a part of this radical experiment that Eyebeam has given us the opportunity to share in. As I do that, I want to try to bring these presentations together. And Yogesh, the books, wow. And the poetry that you gave us some little bit of insight into there, especially at the end, it was reminiscent for me of Ofelia Cepeda's work, a poet and a linguist of the Tana'atam nation. And Ofelia has a poem called Birth Witness. In Birth Witness, she speaks of confronting US government officials and officials of border control. And at the end of the poem, she says, never mind, I must now go and account for myself. And in a way, this is what I heard in your shared tellings, Astrid, Shawn, and Yogesh, an accounting of yourselves, right? Rooted in the domination of colonialism, of patriarchy, of heteropatriarchy, of white supremacy, of certain refusals. And in your art, I see touching, moving matter, right? Home knowledges as ways of making ourselves knowable to one another and to our community members, even in the face of unverifiability. I love that language of the unverifiable, being made verifiable by our stories. And in a way, it's a story of how we know, an epistemological positioning, how we know ourselves, right? Taking account of ourselves and the peoples that we come from. So you've shown us the power of storytelling to refuse, I think, harmful, violent, and dominating narratives. You've reconciled in ways before us colonized imaginations and the refusal of those imaginations, and you've provoked us to consider art as the answer. Art that is multi-perspectival, that is multilingual, multi-species, with the soil as our mentor, and oral knowledges as actual, factual histories and knowabilities. So I wonder if anything that I've said there stirs any one of you to respond. And in your responses, if you can see yourselves in one another's art. And maybe I'll take a breath there and pause, but I think that I've raised the collective sharings and tried to put them in conversations, but I'd really like to ask the artists how they see themselves. And maybe we'll start again with Astrid, how you might see yourself in Shawn's presentation and in Yogesh's, and then we'll move to Shawn and then to Yogesh.
Bueno, es un placer volver a escuchar el trabajo de Shawn y de Yogesh. Creo que estamos interesados en las biografías, en las experiencias del territorio, en las experiencias pues, comunitarias y cómo politizar esas experiencias, dándole valor a cómo se siente el cuerpo y la mente dentro de este territorio y que está configurado para hacernos pensar y ser representados de ciertas maneras por personas que han tenido históricamente el poder de representar y construir imaginarios de ellos mismos y de nosotras como los otros. Entonces, en la escritura de Yogesh, en el activismo de Shawn, veo reflejado mi preocupación por políticamente construir mis propias narrativas y no seguir admitiendo que otras personas escriban y me representen como históricamente se ha hecho con los afrodescendientes y los africanos.
Yeah, I'm really happy to go back to Shawn's work and Yogesh's work. I can see that they're interested in biographies and experiences in a territory where we can once again make ourselves able to communicate, politicizing these experiences and being able to value how our bodies feel in this territory, in these territories that have been set up by people with power, and they've set us up to feel in a certain way. So, and to feel like the others, right? And I can see in Yogesh's writing and in Shawn's activism, I see myself reflected in this initiative to be the owners again of our narratives and not allowing others to make us or to set us up in their narratives.
Gracias, Arturo. Thank you. I hear the idea of embodied knowledges, newly embodied knowledges, and traditionally embodied knowledges, pre-colonial, and futurist as well. So I see even a multi-directional expression of being and of desiring and of asserting liberating narratives. So Shawn, would you please enter the conversation and tell us how you see yourself in Astrid's expressions and art and visions, as well as in Yogesh's?
Absolutely. And I'll be short just because I have a lot of things rambling around in my head. But one thing that I loved when Astrid said, you know, I had to find it was when I found like other young people that were also thinking about this, like that, you know, this issue of, for example, the parade where LGBT people have been banned. They've been banned for a really long time. The LGBT Center and folks have been trying to walk in this parade for a really long time. And it was a coalition, of course, of some of our elders as well as our young people, you know, that has like resulted in a newer push to get those policies changed. And I just saw kind of this through line of looking towards elders for wisdom and knowledge, but maybe some of the energy to change those things, these realities, or these, you know, socialized realities in partnership with young people. And then with Yogesh's work, I was thinking a lot about how so much of my work is with folks who are on the inside of prisons, in particular on Tennessee's death row, and how, you know, we often talk about the oppression of those folks without thinking about the oppressors and without thinking about without being able to hear the voices from folks on the inside themselves, right? Where oftentimes programs will go into prisons and they'll say, let's make this thing, or let's do this thing, or you can write this piece. And then it kind of stays there. And I kind of see part of my work as translating that from a prison context to an outsider context and trying to build bridges between insiders and outsiders, and literally, you know, metaphorically translating that in different ways. If you've never been on Tennessee's death row, if you've never been in a prison, there's a lot of translation and contextualization that needs to happen. And I'm seeing some of those same through lines in Yogesh's work as well.
Shawn, thank you so much. In a way, what you've introduced, and there were elements of this in each presentation, is a participatory ethic. That is part of a decolonized methodology, at least according to Linda Tway-Smith and Chela Sandoval, who in Methodology of the Oppressed says, these methods, these decolonized methods will make us recognizable to one another and show us how we are related. And it's the same when Yogesh tells us about failed language. The new languages that emerge will be the language of recognizability, verifiability to those of us who have been oppressed, silenced, and made unverifiable by authorized powers. And I really, the thing I'll say before turning it back over to Yogesh is that you've also all touched on biomimicry in some ways, because you've asked us to consider where our mentors are, and they are rooted in the earth, in the dirt, in our elders, and in the generations yet to be. Right? When we can see mentors who aren't simply authority figures as prescribed by colonialism, but rather as mentors who have been considered untouchable, unknowable, who've yet to breathe. So thank you for that wild provocation. And Yogesh, will you please tell us how you see yourself in Astrid's work and in Shawn's work?
Right. I would like to thank Astrid and Shawn for basically sharing the very important thing or the experience that they shared about their lives and also their activism and also their intellectual pursuits. While Astrid was presenting her work, and also when Shawn was talking about their activism and also their the quest for education, I kind of drawn to think that before because we are born as humans, and then we start growing up like we are children, and then we go to school, and like we gradually grow. But before becoming political, before becoming conscious about our history, and before coming into the quest for our roots, and before we realize that there is something wrong with the world around us, and then we need to take a position to make changes into that, to alter the realities for the good, for the coming generation. Before that, we have experiences. We have experience of feeling suffocated. We have that experience of feeling that we cannot breathe anymore, and there is something wrong around us. So I think that experience is the essential foundation for all of us, we call artists, to generate that consciousness. And I think based on the, I have when Astrid was talking about her experience, her quest for the identity, her quest for following that question that who am I and what am I in that particular circumstance. When Shawn was talking about the rights, the struggle of the community, and also how the education can also help us to basically empower us in that fight, I realized that there is irrespective of the many languages we speak, the languages which come to us by the society, come to us from school, from families, from institutions. I think the artists, the artists across the globe share the language, and that language is the experience of that language is their experience in which they come to realization that something is wrong. We cannot take it anymore the way it is, and we need to take a position so we can from our side start attempting to change for the better. I think that is the thing I have observed, and I felt when Astrid and Shawn, they were talking, they were sharing basically the part of their life as an artist, as a human being. And I think this is where I also feel connected, irrespective of like we are coming from different realities, geographies, linguistic backgrounds, and also like different political situations. But then here, if we can talk this, I think that is something, a takeaway for me from today's engagement. And I think that is something is it's something very much unique to the fellowship, because fellowship is all about that. Fellowship is about mutual learning.
I love that, Yogesh. I think
this,
go ahead.
And I think, yeah, this is what my takeaway. This is my takeaway from, like, so I learned. I can say I learned today. So this is what I have.
I love, Yogesh, that you've lifted art as an educational tool, a tool of education, a way of bringing new knowledges to the historical register, but also to ways of knowing one another, and being able to use our art as a conduit to shared understanding and to the collective liberation that so much of our art is pointing us toward. I wonder, before we close, if anyone has a question, and it can be a question in the spirit of today's presentation that doesn't need to be answered today. It can just sit on the table. A brief question that we can leave on the table and maybe hold as a part of today's conversation to take with us, or a comment. One question or a comment, and you should feel free to use the chat or to speak it out loud.
One question that I always have, just rumbling again in the back of my mind, is what would it look like to dream about not only decolonization, but re-indigenization? Or, how do we dream about these things away from even the structure of colonization, right? And in so many ways that's impossible given our just reality. But I dream of a space in which we can dream of a place that's not even defined in relation to coloniality.
Ooh,
kind
a
of a-
beautiful provocation to leave us with. And I would say that in a way, you've sketched the anti-colonial. How do we speak outside of that? Yes, beautiful. In the last 3 minutes, and I'd like to leave the very last minute for a collective breath. So any other questions or comments to leave on today's shared table?
A mí me gustaría comentar algo. Hace unos días estuve viendo una entrevista de directores de cine afrofuturista y uno de ellos hablaba de Europa no se preocupa por cuál es el imaginario o la idea que se tiene de Europa, mientras que los africanos y los afrodescendientes estamos constantemente preocupados por cuál es la representación o cuál es la visión que tenemos que construir nosotros mismos, de nosotros mismos y la que han hecho de nosotros. Y al hablar de construir narraciones afrofuturistas o imaginarios afrodescendientes, estamos constantemente regresando a la idea de que necesitamos que nos entiendan y asuman como personas y seres humanos. Y en eso nos demora mucho tiempo cuando podríamos estar dedicando ese tiempo a otros tipos de narrativas. Entonces, es un trabajo constante y doble el que las personas afrodescendientes que estamos construyendo conocimiento, imaginario, reflexiones, imágenes, es mucho más largo. y, y, y la pregunta que me arrojó esta conversación que vi fue cuáles son esos límites entre cuestionar, hacer visible y criticar expresiones racistas y de pronto legitimarlas al mostrarlas, o cuáles son esos riesgos que existen de abrir el ataúd de las caras de las muertes y las violencias históricas hacia los africanos y afrodescendientes y volver a repetir esas experiencias o narrativas de la violencia.
Gracias, Astrid. A ver, Arturo, brevemente, por favor. Tenemos un minuto.
All right. So I was watching a movie by African diasporic director, and they were talking about the African or Afrofuturistic themes, and I realized that we African diasporic people, we take too much time thinking about how other people's how other people think of us or the image they have of us. And Europe does not think about that. They just are. So I was thinking that maybe we are taking too much time of thinking of what other people think of us, and we're not focusing on other, maybe more other stuff that's has more priority. And my final question is, what is the limit between questioning and visibilizing racism and legitimizing this racism by showing it and by opening this kind of tomb with death, which is this racism?
Such a beautiful way to end. And Yogesh, please feel free to put your question or comment in the chat as we are at time. I work really hard to keep us at time so that people know they can enter and exit as planned. Somebody in the chat room apparently asked about how Eyebeam can fuel collaborations between artists with similar social transformations. And I say, keep an eye on Eyebeam. Eyebeam's doing this work, and Eyebeam, let me restate that. Eyebeam is creating the conditions for others to do this work. And that's what's radical about this experiment. I thank you all for being here. And Yogesh's final comment is fellowship is an engagement, is sparkling. And I love to end with sparkles. Thank you, Yogesh. Spark and hope. And with that, I ask us to take a collective breath in and a collective exhale, recognizing that breath is life. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Thank you, Eyebeam. Thank you, Astrid, Shawn, Yogesh. So, so grateful for your amazing, awesome, radical visions. Bye, everyone. Have a beautiful day.
Thank you. Thank you once
Ciao,
again for
gracias.
sharing this hour with us. Thank you to our ASL
you,
interpreters, live captioner Jamie, Vern, and Elise from SignNexus, to Arturo for translating, to our artists Astrid, Shawn, and Yogesh, and of course to the wonderful Adela. Thank you to our wonderful board of directors as well. We hope to see you again tomorrow. Until then, sending positivity your way, and thanks again. See you soon.